Good morning. It pains me to have to actually stand before you and call a press conference on something so absurd, so beyond the pale of morality and of decency, but it sums up exactly where we are in the state of New York today. We are truly living in the land of insanity. And today I want to call on Governor Kathy Hochul to condemn this state university of Brockport for paying a convicted, cold-blooded murderer of police officers to speak to students. The fact that this has to even be said is absurd. This is not a joke. It's horrible. It's a disgusting example of how our educational institutions have been radicalized by the far left, institutionalized by the far left. They're enabled by Democratic politicians that are in charge, that don't say a word in opposition. Anthony Bottom, he can change his name, but he can't change the fact that he's guilty. He's a domestic terrorist who was part of a violent far-left militia group, and he murdered in cold blood 2 members of the NYPD, 2 of New York's finest. He snuck up behind the officers, he ambushed them, shooting them in the back. He shot one officer 22 times as the officer was pleading for his life, telling him that he had a wife and young children. He took Officer Piagenti's service weapon and he shot him with that too. Anthony Bottom should be rotting in a jail cell right now, never to see the light of day. But thanks to Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul's parole board, Anthony Bottoms was set free. And now, thanks to Kathy Hochul and the culture around her administration and government, he's enjoying a life on a paid speaker circuit, raking in our taxpayer dollars to spew his lies and falsehoods. This is not a man that's reformed. This is a man who is trying to rewrite history and make himself into a martyr. He bills himself as a political prisoner, and SUNY Brockport, the taxpayer-funded college, promulgates this BS. This is who they want to put in front of young minds. This is who they think deserves to be paid an honorarium with taxpayer-funded grants designed to promote excellence and diversity. This is so sick and twisted. This is not about free speech. Our state universities have a duty to New York taxpayers. And I can tell you, and I know in the bottom of my heart, that the vast majority of New Yorkers, they find this just as abhorrent as I do. This is victimizing the families of the officers he killed all over again. Governor Hochul has a bully pulpit. She needs to come out today. She's at a podium right now. And she needs to come out of hiding and she needs to speak up about this and demand that this invitation get canceled and rescinded immediately. I mean, she's the first one to tweet about rumors of injustices that happen on college campuses. But here you have state tax dollars going to fund a cop killer speaking to students at a taxpayer-funded university, and she says not a damn thing. That's Kathy Hochul in a nutshell. A good man, former Lieutenant Governor Bob Duffy, himself a retired police officer, he spoke out. Where's Kathy? She's MIA. That's because she's thrown in. She's thrown in with all of these radical leftists. Her silence is deafening. She was silent when the Cuomo and Hochul administration's parole board granted Anthony Bottoms his freedom, and she's silent right now. The 2 officers murdered by Anthony Bottom also happened to be from the same 32nd precinct where officers Mora and Rivera were from. It's an eerie reminder of the dangers that our men and women in uniform always face every day. They faced that back in 1971 when depraved murderers like Anthony Bottom were on the loose. The bad old days of New York City. But now, sadly, they face it again when officers Rivera and Mora were ambushed responding to a call. allowing this man to use our state university system and receive our state tax dollars to spew this propaganda is an unconscionable miscarriage of justice. And it's a slap in the face to every law enforcement officer in the state of New York. The left's dangerous ideology and dangerous policies, they need to be called out forcefully and unequivocally, even on college campuses. And the people in power, when they're silent about it, they're complicit in it. And Kathy Hochul's got a master's degree in being complicit. We're not mincing words. There's too much on the line for the future of this state. And every minute that goes by that Kathy Hochul doesn't stop this and use the bully pulpit of her office to make sure that people understand whose side she's on, shows she's siding with the cop killers over New Yorkers and the law-abiding citizens of this great state. New Yorkers have to remember this in November. This is insanity, and it's on the ballot this November. Elections have consequences. We will, as Republicans, stop this madness, and we will return common sense to the people of the state of New York and their government when we elect a Republican governor this November. So thank you, and I'd be happy to take your questions.
Isn't there an argument to be made that this is more of a reflection of the SUNY system than it is of the governor, as she doesn't directly control the system? Or is this just sort of a domino effect?
This is a domino effect. I mean, any governor can say, oh, I don't control it. But, I mean, let's face it. The money comes from that building down the street. It is heavily, heavily subsidized by tax dollars. And the governor has a bully pulpit. If the governor wants to get something done, trust me, it'll get done. And Andrew Cuomo proved that, time and again. If he wanted something changed, it changed.
And what do you think the motive was, but not behind the effect, but behind why they wanted this individual to speak at SUNY Brockport?
I can't get my head around it. I mean, I just why anyone would want to sit and listen to what a cop killer has to say. And they're billing him as a political prisoner. I mean, I articulated exactly what his crimes were. He should still be rotting in jail right now. But sadly, this is a reflection on the parole board, and this is something that, as the year goes on, we'll be certainly unpacking what the Cuomo-Hochul years have done to the New York State Parole Board and what a miscarriage of justice that it's been. I mean, we have a lot of what we're seeing in the streets. It's, the collision between an out-of-control parole board letting all sorts of people that don't belong out on the streets out in the name of justice, in social justice in their eyes, meets bail reform and discovery reform and criminals having no consequences. Well, what do you know? When you got a lot of bad people out on the loose and they're filling their oats and you have no consequences for them, our lives as the people that are just trying to live our lives in a as taxpayers in a law-abiding way, we're going to become victims again. And she won't address it. She said that the bail reform is being scapegoated. You hear excuse after excuse out of Andre Stewart Cousins and Carl Hastie. There is no political courage in that building to take this on because they are all victims of the radical left. Now, sadly, we have headquarters for the radical left on every one of these campuses across the state. This has been allowed even in the era of cancel culture, where people have had their careers wiped out. I mean, even you listen to our former governor; he says he's a victim of it. You've had people have their entire careers and livelihoods wiped out because of this. Yet something of this magnitude, where a cop killer can go to a college campus and these people want to cry free speech. It's nonsense.
So I'm assuming your argument is that this is a feature and not a bug. So that means that this can't be taken as an isolated incident. So what do you do culturally to shift things over time?
I think that we have to decide who we are and not allow this sort of thing to fester on our campus, because you have young minds. You have the next generation of our state. Here we're paying big bucks to educate them in our state universities, and when this is normalized behavior and is taught, and students might feel forced to accept this in listening to a cold-blooded murderer declare himself a cop killer or declare himself a political prisoner, there's something wrong with the system, and I think there needs to be an awakening on our campuses to balance in the marketplace of ideas. I mean, too many, extreme leftists have gone into academia, and it's absolutely gotten out of control. A governor can make sure that things like this don't happen by using the bully pulpit of her office to just show how out of bounds that this is.
And last one for me. Do you think someone like this can reform?
I certainly believe that people deserve second chances, but Anthony Bottom is not, showing himself as someone that's reformed. He's out there trying to become a political prisoner, is what he's saying he was. He was a cold-blooded murderer. He's not saying, trying to give an uplifting message on how you can be reformed during your time of incarceration and do the right thing. I mean, second chances are certainly, there's a lot of great success stories, but there's an awful lot of bad people out on the streets because this parole board, in the name of being woke and claiming social justice, has let a whole lot of really bad criminals out way before their terms were up. Any other questions? Okay.
Thanks, guys.
If this continues, she's going to get booed a lot louder than she did at MSG last night. That's for sure. So, thank you, everybody.